மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.
The highest level game I can find featuring the 4 pawns attack in recent play. And this is a game between Alexander Grischuk and Peter Svidler. And this comes from the World Cup Rapid tournament played in 2009. This may only be a rapid game, but it is of interest, and it's a very sharp encounter. It features the main line, where black plays knight c6 and then bishop f5. White does well to delay the entry of the knight on g1 into the game, lest black play bishop g4. So it's best for white just to keep that knight at home until black develops his queen's bishop. With the queen's bishop developed to f5, everything's at hand. White can bring his knight out, and black brings the bishop out to e7. And you could easily say that this is the absolute main line of the 4 pawns attack. I remember studying the 4 pawns attack as a kid, and this was always the line recommended for black. Just bring out the pieces and try to attack the white centre further a little later down the line. And the reliability of black's system can be seen after bishop e2. This was the old-fashioned main line where white just contented himself with developing his pieces. It's well known that this doesn't really trouble black, and in the game Zilberstein versus Baburin, San Francisco 2007, black hit at the white centre with the traditional f6. Yes, black inherits a weak pawn on e6, but he also gets very active pieces in this line. And white has a very hard job proving anything after rook a d1, rook a d8. Theory suggests that queen c1 is the best move. Well, Baburin is one of the great connoisseurs of Alekhine's defence, one of the few grandmasters who is willing to employ this defence on a regular basis. So it is noteworthy to see how he tackles the white system here. He basically doesn't do very much. He just solidifies his position and invites white to come forward. As I say, you know, how is white going to make anything of this pawn? And if he doesn't somehow find a way to attack this pawn, well, that pawn covers good central squares. White played b3, black played a6, bishop g1, rook d7. Both sides manoeuvring. White's trying to get on that pawn at e6, but black just carefully moves his queen to and fro, and white decides, well, I can't do very much either. And that is the story of this particular line. In general, bishop e2 has all but been discarded at the highest level of chess because it's not particularly effective. So then we come to the critical move here, d5, which is the main reason a lot of black players are being put off the main line these days, in the sense that there's an awful lot of theory on this move, and you have to know it. One mistake by either side, that's curtains. Grischuk and Svidler, well, it just goes to show that, you know, even these guys at the highest level can go wrong in this line, or they maybe forget their theory. But for the time being, this is all main line. Now white brings his knight to d4, bishop comes back to d7. And in order to actually stop his centre from crumbling, white has got to take some extraordinary measures. So Grischuk goes e6. Now it could be, if you're going to play this system with black, that queen f3 is possibly a more dangerous system for you to face. That's a favourite of the Cuban grandmaster Liné Dominguez. After that, maybe c5 is a good move. D takes c6, b takes c6. And now it's a question of whether, you know, black can get his pieces to good squares. Dominguez has played this position with white. He obviously thinks that his active piece locations here give him the better game. But how about knight 4 d5, bishop f2, queen c7, and then queen b7? This looks playable for black to me. But as I say, you have to satisfy yourself that this is okay for black if you're going to go in for this line. Grischuk, meanwhile, hits out with e6. F takes e6, d takes e6, bishop c6, queen g4, and now bishop h4 check is answered by the critical move, g3. Okay, I remember that I used to study this line for black, and it was hair-raising even 25 years ago. Today, well, let's just see what happens as black declines the polite offer for the time being. White castles on the queen side, and now it's a do-or-die situation for black. He has to take that rook on h1, whereupon white takes on h4. So for the exchange, white has got a monster e-pawn. He's got possible discoveries with the knight on d4. he's got seemingly very active bishops. Can black possibly withstand this pressure? Well, yes, he can, after queen f6. And now there's even a possibility that black might sacrifice his queen on f1. So bishop b5 has come to be considered as the best move for white. All right, c6 attack the bishop. Bishop g5, queen e5, and this variation has laws of its own, as white virtually ignores all of black's attacks and plays e7. Rook f e8. Well, now, apparently this position was confusing even these super grandmasters, because Grischuk forgets his theory at this point and plays a mistake. Rook takes h1. Apparently what he should do is to play knight f5 in this position. And then black's only reply, because white was threatening knight h6 check, is h5. If queen takes b4, the fun continues with c takes b5. And if knight d6, black should play bishop c6. After queen b3, we get knight c4. There are a couple of exchanges, and then white brings his queen in. This is all theory, by the way, so you would have to be able to remember all this if you played this line. Svidler and Grischuk obviously didn't. Queen takes h5 check, king g8, queen g4, and then we get rook c7. And after bishop f4, we go queen takes e7, and bishop takes c7, queen takes c7, queen g3, should be answered by queen f7, a3. Now, I don't know about you, but we're on move 34. White's a pawn up, but black's very strong bishop on c6 and well-coordinated pieces give him plenty of compensation for the pawn. If you like this position, if you like this variation, then by all means play it. But I'm just trying to highlight the fact that you have to know an incredible amount if you play this line. Going back to Grischuk's Svidler, we're about to pick up the game and white makes a mistake. Rook takes h1. C takes b5. Knight f3. Well, again, knight f5 in this position is answered by knight d3 check and then knight f2. So that is not the same as before. But knight f3, now Svidler makes a reciprocal mistake. Perhaps we can put this down to the rapid play game, as according to theory, black is supposed to play queen c5 when the threats of knight d3 check and knight takes a2 check are unstoppable. Svidler plays knight d3 first. King c2, queen d6, and now comes rook to d1. Well, if knight takes b5 in this position, knight b4 check, king b3, and then queen d5 is going to force mate, or decisive win of material. a5, king a3, queen c5 check, king b3, and then a4 check forces black to surrender, white to surrender the queen. So back to queen d6, rook d1 pins, and now knight f2. The game careers on. Rook takes d6. Knight takes g4. Rook d4, attacking the knight. And now knight f6, by which black breaks the power of the bishop on g5. Once that power is broken, then black can look to win the game. So this is why white fights tooth and nail to get that bishop back into the game with h5 and then h6. But rook d7 does the job for black. Bishop takes f6, g takes f6, rook g4 check, king f7. If rook g7 check, the king can walk out to e6. So knight takes b5, but that's not good enough. Rook c8 check. Finally, black has got his act together. He's got his rooks working together. Rook f4, knight d5, and with simplifications in progress, white resigned. Now, just going back to bishop e7. I hope I've shown the depth to which you have to know this line. I think it's still playable for black. I think it can still win games for black. But you have to be extremely well prepared. Grischuk and Svidler, well, they certainly battled it out, and black got the upper hand in this game. Personally, I think I prefer the g6 line, c5 and g6. But there's no doubt about it. Black has a variety of methods against the 4 pawns attack.
மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. தேங்க்யூ.